Well, hello, Internet. I hope some people are going to come and join us here. Let me just adjust this a touch. All right. So, you guys know that I'm big into Saisons. To do a lot of Saison strain testing. And when I first started doing this about 10 years ago, there were about 14 strains available on the market. Nowadays, turns out, I think every time you turn around, another yeast company has opened up and another yeast company has added about another half dozen Saison strains. So my little project is well behind, and I'm just starting to catch up and get back into the game of it. If you want, you can look on maltosefalcons.com for a Saison guide and how to ferment Saisons. I have a very particular manifesto about it. I use open fermentation because I deeply, deeply believe in the idea of open fermentation for this sort of thing. We had a question on the chat about what's the ABV. This is a table strength Saison. It has an OG of 1048. Don't want to stress the yeast out too much by going too high in gravity. So this comes in at about 5.5%, which is probably still a little bit above what would be traditional for a old school Saison, but whatever. So I have 3 strains here, all of them from the Yeast May. If you don't know the Yeast May, it's a cool little company run up out of the San Francisco area by Nick Impelatelli. And he has kind of a habit of finding new strains, and then he hands them off actually to white labs to go do all the culturing and production, because that's not his thing. His thing is finding the new strains. So I have 3 strains here, and they are the Wallonian strain, his Saison blend number 1, and his Saison blend number 2. Now, why the blends? If you've listened to the podcast, you know that a lot of people out there have sort of the opinion that the traditional Saison strains, your White Labs the 565 Belgian Saison 1, Yeast 3724 Belgian Saison, have a reputation for being notoriously difficult. Again, if you look at my manifesto, you'll see that I have ways of dealing with that, or at least ways I think to deal with that. And the recent experiment that we just did on the podcast about open fermentation in Saison strains seems to back up my sort of way of doing this. Just to give you the recipe real quick, it's super simple. For 5.5 gallons, it's 8 3/4 pounds Pilsner malt. It is a half a pound of flaked wheat and a pound of sugar. There's 1 hop addition, that's just Magnum, just to give a nice basic bitteriness. And otherwise, it's designed to stay out of the way and allow the yeast to express itself. Now, I'm not a guy who rebrews a lot of beers very often. In fact, hardly ever. This is the recipe I have brewed the most. So this one is about batch 20 of this, I think. But unlike, say, my partner Denny Kahn there, who likes to rebrew so he can dial in and perfect the recipe, I have this one. I don't change it, and all I'm doing is testing the strains. So, without further ado, let's have some beer. We're going to start with the Yeast May Saison blend number 1. What's really nice to see is that of all the glasses, sometimes you get yeast color differences. All of these right on color-wise, so that's nice to see. These have been sitting for a couple minutes, which is the reason why the head is gone. But let's give it a quick taste. And by the way, for the record, this is my second tasting because I wanted to make sure that I had a chance. Yeah, thanks, Sully. I kind of figured you'd appreciate the fact that I was showing off your logo there. But this is... first impressions are cinnamon apple jacks. There's a little bit of apple ester in here, but followed up very closely by a strong cinnamon character. That cinnamon actually runs all the way through. Beer finishes out fairly dry. Of the 3 strains that we're going to try today, I would say that this is one that is the most classically Saison in terms of what you'd expect. So you got your spice phenols. You've got a fairly dry finish to this, and just really refreshing. Let me see what else were in my notes. Oh, that's right. And when I was tasting it last night, really interesting thing that I noticed was that this came forward with an herbal tea character, kind of like a mint, which I would suspect is probably the hop being expressed. But in this case, this is a very serviceable strain, and again, I think this one, my usual protocol is to say, hey, chill the beer down to the 63 area. Chill the wort down to 63 before you do anything with it. Throw in a healthy amount of yeast, and then once you get the yeast in there, let the beer slowly ramp up, and then eventually, after about day 3, just let it go. And I'm talking to you from my garage here in Southern California. There is no air conditioning in this garage, and so this garage during the summer will get into excess of 100 degrees. So what I tend to do is I tend to put my fermenters in water baths or in the chest freezer behind me if I have the room. And so this particular strain, I think the apple character that I'm getting here is probably more strongly expressed because of the just water bath temperature control, and would probably actually be better suited to a more stringent temperature control regimen. All right, so that was the Yeast May. All right. Hey, Jared. Good to see you. Now, this is the Yeast May Saison blend number 2. All right, so another blend, different sort of emphasis. This was the one that when I tasted it last night, first thing I got was sort of a very clean, crisp nose, but also with a lot of grape character. So almost like a Sauvignon Blanc. I know Mike Karnowski was on line earlier today when I was talking about doing this, and he mentioned that this was his favorite. Mike is in Homebrew All-Stars. He had been with Green Man, and has just recently, I think, opened up Zebulon Ales over in Asheville. So if you like weird, funky beers, and you're somewhere near Asheville, go find them. Well, Marshall, if you were here, you could actually have some of the beer, but you're not. So it's close. Miss you, buddy. All right, so let's taste this one. Yeah, once again, it is definitely right there. That first thing is that grape. Almost, again, a Sauvignon Blanc, white wine grape. And here we also get a very strong sandalwood character. I find sandalwood to be a really great character to have in a beer from some of these yeast. I don't think it's that easy to capture. A lot of times it ends up kind of becoming more of a sandalwood, the sandalwood ends up becoming more of a cinnamon, a clove phenol. In this particular case, we've got very much a sandalwood type character, which I really like. Other thing about this, of the 3 strains that we're having here, this is the Saison Blend 2 from Yeast May throws way more of a luxurious body. Usually when I think of Saisons, it's always, hey, dry, 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 dry. This one has a bigger body to it, but not like the French Saison strains like Yeast 3711, which come with that sort of almost gelatinous, glutinous type mouthfeel. And yeah, it's warm, it's rich, but it still comes into that sort of spice-driven dryness in the finish, which is very, very good. All right. So of the 2 so far that we've had, I will say I'm right there with Mike. I like the Saison Blend 2 better because I think it actually provides some different characters. Now, having said that, there are places where I think Saison Blend 1 has more of an application. Attenuation on all these, there was a question about attenuation. All of these attenuated out down into, I think, they all pretty much landed right around about 10.5. So, and that was from 1048, 1050. So, pretty typical Saison attenuation. I'm not much of one for the sort of ego measuring contest that comes with how low is my attenuation with my Saisons. I know there are some people out there who brag, hey, I got this Saison down to 1003, 1002, it's water weight. Yeah, I'm not huge about that. I'd rather have a little bit of extraness in the beer just to have the flavor. All right, last strain that we're going to try, and then we're going to do something special here. And then I'll talk about what I'm going to do today, because it's sort of an extension on this. So this is the Yeast May Willonian. So this would arguably be a single strain, more classic Saison idea. And first thing right out of the gate, tropical fruit pineapple bomb. And if you're experiencing stalls on your Saison strains, like we see the question here right now, open ferment. This is my thing. Marshall didn't see the results, but our other testers did. So really, I think for the most part, if you can do an open ferment with the Saison strain, it works much better. All right. So again, beer smells very much like tropical fruit. Hot buttered pineapple with cinnamon and ginger. Low on the butter. So it's not diacetyl. It's just sort of a rich, warming character. All right, so of the three that we've had so far, this is the first one that I think has kind of a blend between the two in terms of the approach, in terms of just both the classicalness and also that sort of richer, warmer mouthfeel. And so the Yeast May Walloonian, I think, comes off probably the most balanced of the three. It also has a little bit of actually an acid edge. Now, I'm not also a huge fan of all Saisons have to be breaded, all Saisons have to be wild, all Saisons have to have some sort of sour note to them. I don't necessarily think that's the case. For instance, I have sitting over here a couple bottles of Deux Amis and Saison de Pont avec le Bambou. Both of those have a little bit of Brett character to them, but they're not Brett beers, right? They're not sour beers. They are Saisons with just a little something extra to it. So this has a little bit of something extra to it, and it's really kind of nice. This really still does carry through with that sort of tropical fruit, upside down cake, type of thing. So in summary, talking about the three yeast strains that we had here, again, Saison Blend 1, Saison Blend 2, and Walloonian, all from Yeast May. I would put it down as Saison Blend 1 is the most classical. Saison Blend 2 is sort of the newfangled Saison profile, grape, and also that luxurious mouthfeel. And Walloonian is sort of kind of in between the two of them. Saison Blend 2 does a really good job also, I think, pushing up the hops. Now remember, this recipe only had one hop addition in it, and that was Magnum. And it was a Magnum bittering charge. But this, the Blend 2 is actually really expressing the hops a lot better. And then for the something special, I got to break out my Los Angeles Brewers Guild, LA beer. Give it a little bit of love to Franny and company. This is actually a glass that I just poured, a blend of Saison Blend 1 and Saison Blend 2, just to see if that works. Yeah, Magnum bittering is by far and away my almost universal the thing that I do. I tend to use Magnum for almost everything that is continental. I will use Warrior for most American styles, particularly American IPA type things. And I will use something like a Challenger or a Progress or a Target if I'm going for British style beers. I really like the idea of just getting my hop bitterness, the majority of my hop bitterness, with very little amount of green. Yeah, exactly. Low vegetal. All right. So now Yeast May Saison Blend 1 mixed with Yeast May Saison Blend 2. Again, these were separately fermented, so they weren't fermented together. This is just a post kegging blend, which if you haven't done that, you probably should, because it's a great way to get more variety. Now remember we said that the Blend 2 came out with a grape and sandalwood thing. Blend 1 was more apple and cinnamon, more spice. All right, now here's what's interesting is I definitely get the cinnamon, I definitely get that apple, right, because the apple esters carry very high. U.S. Magnum, almost exclusively. Never really seen a reason to go for the extra expense for the German. So the apple ester comes through much more strongly in this blend than I would actually hope for. I would want a little bit less of the apple. And again, I don't put that so much on the yeast strain as much as I put on the warmth of the temperatures that I used for this particular thing. But we're still getting that very nice sandalwood character. And what's interesting is this blend of the two blends together. Well, these actually these come up with a slightly more acidic edge than I get out of either one by themselves. The temps for fermentation, 90-minute boil, yes. Temperatures for the fermentation here in Southern California during this period of time ranged all the way up into the 90s, high 90s. But like I said, I kept them all in a water bath and kept the water kind of cool. So added ice. Pitch rate was a standard 1 quart starter into 5 gallons that I did decant. Straight up off of fresh packs. Basically, Nick got me the tubes and they came earlier in the week. They were nice and fresh, and put them into starters and got them going. Yeah, again, controlled for the first 3 days and then free-rised. Just using the water bath to sort of shield any sort of massive temperature swings. But there you go. These are the 3 yeast May strains that I got my hands on to do this particular test. I did this as part of our Brew with the Falcon Day. I know some of the people who are watching right now were part of the Brew with the Falcon, so here you go. Now you get to see that the beer is actually real. If you don't know what Brew with the Falcon is, it's one of my favorite things that we do in my club. And literally what we do is we get 4 or 5 members of the club to volunteer their homesteads, invite people in and say, hey, come on, come brew with me. And we do that because I think it's much better to have people come to a place to homebrew, because the second you take your home brewery outside of your home, it's no longer your home brewery. You're doing something different, right? So here we are. This was the thing. The day that we did this, we did 15 gallons of Saison right here. We did 3 gallons of a almond honey mead, which is actually sitting right here at my feet and needs to be kegged. We did 3 gallons on my Pico Brews Imatic, which is right behind the camera here. And we did that with a Irish ale malt, and we turned that into a Irish farmhouse ale because I used a Fantôme strain on it. So it's the little Banshee. And then down here in the corner was the last beer that we did that day, which was actually a kettle soured made with extract and a little bit of East Coast yeast. So now somebody asked about the open fermentation earlier, and I just want to show you guys what I do. I ferment most of my big batches of beer in these. These are 10-gallon corny kegs. I've gotten lucky over the years, and I've got 4 of these. And what I do in order to do my open fermentations is I literally take the PRV here, crack it open, and cover it with a piece of sanitized foil. And that's pretty much all I need to do. And every time I've ever done that, I end up not having a stall. And that was the whole reason for the experiment. Was people said that things like 565 and whatnot are, notorious stallers. They don't like to ferment. You got to do all these stupid tricks. You got to go post-pitch them with 1056 or White Labs 001 so that you get your fermentation temperatures down in reasonable times. And I never had that problem. And then I got talking with folks from White Yeast and White Labs, and they said, they're back pressure sensitive. We can debate about back pressure sensitivity, but it is a thing. But in this particular case, I think it's the open fermentation more than anything else. It's getting rid of the CO2. If you're doing a carboy, totally foil top, what I will do is I will put foil on top of the carboy. And same thing here with the kegs. I'll put foil on top of those. I will let that run as long as primary fermentation is going. And then I will drop an airlock or close the PRV once the poison starts to fall so that we get the protection. I've never done it in a conical. That came off sounding wrong. I've never done open fermentation in a conical. There we go. But if I were doing it, I still probably wouldn't do a blow off to it. I'd probably still just do foil. But I'm me. And yeah, I won't claim that the technique's perfect. Somebody said they just did foil on a carboy and it stalled. I do really feel strongly that you need to have good, healthy yeast for this. All right. So now, speaking of good, healthy yeast, let's switch to something different because I'm getting ready, actually, even though it's something o'clock. I'm getting ready to start a brew day because I don't sleep. So I'm going to pull my big rig out here, and I'm going to do 20 gallons of more Saison, more of this exact recipe too. And I'd be curious to see what you think of those fast ferments. So I've had mixed feelings about them and heard mixed things about them. So who knows? Maybe you have a positive reaction to them, and if you do, let me know. All right, I'm going to move the camera around here just for a second. No, honey, I'm not drinking beer out here. All right, so just show you guys real quick. You'll have to pardon the mess in the garage because the garage is, well, the maid doesn't make it out to the garage. All right, and you can see over here, this is my Pika Brew Zymatic that the fine folks at Pika Brew were kind enough to give me. And what we've got here going for today, is 3 starters I've produced. One with the White Labs Leeuwenhoek Saison blend, which a lot of people really, really, really love. And it's brand new. They had it in their tasting room, but they put it out of the vault, and enough people ordered it that I've got 2 tubes of this stuff sitting by. And so today I'm going to do this with my experimental strain so that we can try that. Hey, stay. All right, and then, of course, I love me some East Coast yeast, and this one was new to me. This one's new to me. This is their Saison single strain, ECY, and so I've got it going in a starter as well. And the last one is, or the last 2, one of which you guys know doesn't actually require a starter, and that's the Belle Saison. I did one previous batch with this. Hi, Chris. I did one previous batch with this, and I wasn't very happy with how it came out, and I didn't want to write my notes based on it, because I'd rather give it a fair shake, and I would love to have a dried Saison yeast that actually does something real, because Saison yeast is, or dry yeast is fun and convenient. And then the last one we're going to do is White Labs Platinum Series French Ale yeast. Now, they don't call this a Saison strain, they say this is good for beer guards, but hey, beer guards are farmhouse ales, so let's do that too in the guide. Otherwise, people will ask me questions. So, and then the last thing I'm going to do, because why just do one thing? 2 marbles. My partner in crime, Denny Kahn, got his hands on some brand new D240 candy syrup. And he went to go brew a batch beer with it. And naturally, when people send you something like that, they send you too much of it. And so he sent me some of his. And anybody had a good experience? Chris, you've had good experience with the D240? I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but I can tell you right now, just opening up the jar that I just did here, you can see this stuff basically looks like molasses. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do what I always do, which is I'm going to brew a pale Saison, and I'm going to do that with the Zymatic. And I'm going to add a little bit of this stuff to it. But the first thing about it is this comes off with a huge molasses character. Ah, the French yeast. Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm curious to see what that one's like because I don't think there are very many beer de garde specific strains that have been out there, at least available to the homebrew level. So I'm curious to see if we can get some of those musty, earthy flavors. All right. And I know Castellane's probably mostly a lager yeast, but all right. And here we go. You can see this is the 240 D240. It's got a little bit of viscousness to it. Let's see. Yeah, so again, molasses, burnt brown sugar, trying to think, plum, and there's actually also kind of a mineral character to it, heavily mineralized water. I would suspect that's part of the molasses making process, but there you go. So this stuff is going to go into a 2.5 gallon Pico Brew Zymatic batch. Probably not the whole thing because you can see this is a half gallon jar, and I've got about a quart of it, and that would probably be way too much. So I'm going to calculate that out, and that's a good idea, John. Mead with a D240 just to give it a little bit of extra bit. And yeah, that's right. Yeast did put out a bearded guard strain. I don't know why I forgot about it because it's heavily rumored to be the primary strain in Fantôme. So we'll see if that actually works. All right. Well, hey, so there you go, guys. We did a little bit of beer tasting here, tested out some yeast strains, showed you guys what I'm going to get up to in here in a little bit, and we also tried a little bit of a blend of a beer. Remember, support your local brewery guild, support your local home brewer, and get out there and brew. And in the meanwhile, I hope everybody has a great Labor Day. Hope that you're having a good time, and that, who knows, maybe you got some burgers on the grill, or you're getting ready to do some brewing yourself. And if you're one of those people who rises up at 6 a.m. and has already done your brew day, well, congratulations, you've made beer. And don't forget, coming up soon, I think we're going to, it's not next episode, but the episode in a month. I think Denny and I are going to do our Q&A episode, all Q&A all the time. So if you get a chance, make sure that you send in a question to podcast@experimentalbrew.com or questions@experimentalbrew.com. If you want to buy a t-shirt, then you can support us. You totally know where to find us, experimentalbrew.com. There's a store right there. And remember that we drop a new episode every 2 weeks. We just dropped one last week. This week we're recording. So if you've got questions, topics, anything, feel free. Drop me a line. You can hit me up here on Facebook. You can hit me up on YouTube. You can hit me up, pretty much anywhere. And if you're part of a brewing forum, odds are pretty good Denny Kahn is there. And Denny will take requests as well. So again, until then, I hope everybody has a good time. Remember, play with your yeast. This wasn't that hard to do, right? All I had to do was brew up an extra big batch. The hardest part was finding all the yeast strains. I expect to see some new notes go up on the Saison guide. And until then, remember, ferment open and have a Saison-y time. All right, everybody, have a good one. Cheers.